Colts Texans. Going through what y'all need to know to make some money on this bitch. So the picks real quick. We got spread of Colts favored by 3.5 in Houston and an over under set at 51. So this line is bonkers. I'm, this is such an overreaction to the last couple weeks. Given that Colts game versus the Titans, which was so obvious was gonna end up like that, and then the Texans beating a mediocre Patriots team and kind of blowing out a terrible Lions team. I'm super strong on the Colts minus 3.5 in this game and the Colts money line. I mean, I'll get into why, but that line is nowhere near where it should be. And then as far as the over under, I actually feel pretty strongly about the under too. I don't think the Texans are gonna be able to score in this game, and the Colts aren't a crazy offense themselves. I don't. I feel much better about the Colts, but both of them are super bettable for sure. So yeah, stick around and I'll explain why that's how it'll go down. So the first step we got Colts offense versus Texans defense. Injuries on the Colts offense. Anthony Costanzo, starting left tackle, is out, which does matter to a point. But no, I should say he is good, but Raven Clark actually hasn't been such an awful disaster as a backup, and and in this game, I don't think that's really going to matter a whole lot. On the Texans side, defensively, so Bradley Roby, their starting corner, not an injury, but he just got put in the suspension. Like he got suspended for 6 games alongside Will Fuller, their receiver. So they're down another corner, and Ross Blacklock, rookie defensive tackle, front three player, is questionable. But yes, well, first step we got the offensive line versus the defensive line. I mean, listen, I talk sometimes about how I think the Colts offensive line is pretty overrated, and I think that shows like games like last week. But here, I mean, they're still good. Like I'm not gonna shit on them too hard. They're still good, and compared to the Texans front, I mean, they're gonna be able to do enough, right? Like their interior, Quentin Nelson, Mark Lewinsky, Ryan Kelly, they all have their individual flaws for sure, but they're going to be able to really control the line of scrimmage versus the Texans. I actually have some respect for Brandon Dunn, and I think Corey Legit, randomly, the veteran, has actually still got it a little bit, but they're not to the level they need to be for this game. I mean, I'm telling you, the Colts interior is going to push. And on the edges, right, so the Texans' edge defenders are real bad. Whitney Merciless is just useless at this point. And the other edge, if they play, whether they kind of rotate Jacob Martin, who is actually I think is a legitimately useful speed rusher, but as an edge run defender, no thank you. And Jonathan Gennard, a rookie from Florida, who is not impressive so far, although he's not a disaster. But anyway, here even without Costanzo, especially on the Braden Smith side of things, the Colts right tackle, he's going to control the line of scrimmage like very notably throughout this game. And on the other edge, Raven Clark, like I said, he hasn't been great by not even close. He hasn't even really been good, but I don't think he's been so awful. And the bar is just not high here. I'm telling you. I mean, he'll probably have a little bit of issue with Whitney Merciless because he's not a good veteran because he's a veteran and he doesn't at least understand the rules of defense on the edge. But they're going to be just fine. But it's not going to be maybe as crazy as the Colts would look like with Costanzo. And I should mention J.J. Watt too. Really good player, especially against the run. But here, there's only so much one player can do, especially as like a inside outside defensive lineman. Well, I do think he's going to have an impact, and he's actually the type of player that gives Mark Lewinsky, especially, but even Quentin Nelson, kind of problems. I don't think it's going to be an every down thing, but he is plays into why I don't think the Colts are going to go crazy with offense. So then you talk about the second level, Texans linebackers not good, not limiting at all. So Tyrell Adams had a ton of tackles. Was it against the Lions? But that's because someone had to, right? I mean, it was the Pats the week before that, but he's not good. The point being, he doesn't actually make plays. He doesn't stop things from happening. He just happens to be the one at the end of the play that gets the tackle, which is better than not making a tackle, sure. But he's not a reason that a team doesn't succeed, an offense doesn't succeed. Same with Zach Cunningham too, who's more of an athlete. I mean, he's an okay coverage player, but here he's not good enough to stand up. So you talk about the overall run game, and I think it's gonna be pretty decent. I don't think it's gonna go crazy like I mentioned because J.J. Watt, because they are missing one edge of control, and the linebackers are disasters. But especially over attempts, they're gonna be more and more decent. I don't want to go dominant, I don't want to go great, but I think they're gonna be more than good enough. So then you talk about the pass rush. So we're getting the pass game here. And well, actually, I'll mention there's some stuff here for the Texans, but they're just generally not very good at rushing the passer. They don't do anything create pressure like scheme wise. And while J.J. Watt is going to give Mark Lewinsky and Quentin Nelson issues for sure, and if he lines up at edge, he can be both the tackles too. But he is one player, and the Colts are really going to blow him up in their game plan. I'm positive. And other than him, the Texans have borderline nothing. I do Jacob Martin, like I mentioned before. I actually respect as a speed rusher. I think he's reasonable, but I'm not going to go overboard with him. And Braden Smith can handle him no problem. Braden Smith's like good against that type of rusher. Or even Clark on the other side. Maybe there's gonna be some issues there, but it's nothing that like down to down I'm super concerned about. So then you talk about the receivers, and here, I mean, goddamn. So the Texans, right, without Bradley Roby now, they have the worst corner starting in the NFL. Keon Crossan, Philip Gaines probably starting on the outside, and then Vernon Hargraves, awful player, is going to be starting the slot. Maybe he'll move outside too. They kind of rotated between Keon Crossan and John Reed, who's a rookie at Penn State this year. Between who's playing that third corner spot. Either way, neither of them showed to be good at all. So this is the rare game because the Colts receivers aren't very good, right? I mean, they do some okay things, but T.Y. Hilton at this point, even before, he falls into more of that, like, the way I think of, like, Tyler Lockett or Christian Kirk. As far as, like, he's fast, but he doesn't actually create that much separation. T.I. was better for sure when he was younger, but here, he's still, I mean, he's going to be good enough to beat these corners. Don't get me wrong. And Michael Pittman has shown some decent things. I think he's reasonable, and he's going to be good enough too, for sure. I think he might go off this game in terms of being open consistently. Zach Pascal, even anyone can be Vernon Hargraves. Let me be clear. So you're talking about separation from the receivers, and the tight ends even I think are going to be okay. They're not going to go crazy because Justin Reed and Zach Cunningham are at least good enough to keep like the Colts tight ends aren't anything special, so they're good enough to kind of keep pace with them a little bit. But the Colts tight ends are semi fine. I will say though, I mentioned last week I thought Naeem Hines would go off. I don't think so much this week, like I mentioned, because those two he still could have a number of receptions, but I don't necessarily see him at the same level this game. So the next thing, Philip Rivers versus the defense. So Philip Rivers is not going to struggle with what the Texans do defensively at all. He's not going to be confused. He's not going to be upset by it. There's not enough. So he struggles with a lot of pass rush. There's not enough here, and he also struggles if there's no pass rush because then he gets super risky and just starts throwing dumb shit downfield. There's enough here, and B that's probably even going to work. Him taking dumb risks downfield, like I mentioned, the Texans secondary is terrible at this point. So he's gonna have chances. And T.Y. Hilton, Marcus Johnson too, who I actually think has done some nice things, backup receiver on the Colts. They're gonna be able to find space deep at points. And like I said, Michael Pittman, I bet is gonna be open a whole lot in this game. Breakout coming for him, I think. And for the public, he's already been pretty good. So yeah, the overall pass game, I think it's gonna be like decent to okay. Like I said, Philip Rivers is just not a killer, even from a clean pocket. But he's probably gonna just rack up a bunch of yardage because any given play, he's going to have options open in the short to intermediate, like effectively always. And without enough pass rush to mitigate that, that's going to equal ball movement. The red zone, though, Philip Rivers not great in the red zone. Almost bad. He's kind of in the Matt Stafford camp of there's a reason their offenses are generally not that good unless they have like Shanahan, something like that. But here, right, them being able to run the ball as well as I think they can, which isn't crazy, but it's enough to raise the floor in the red zone. And their options are there because the Texans are so bad defensively. So it's not going to be crazy, but they could easily be perfect in the red zone in this game. I wouldn't expect so, but I have them at a point spread of 23-30, which I feel pretty good about in this instance. So then the Texans offense versus the Colts defense. Injuries for the Texans offense. So I mentioned earlier, Will Fuller suspended, so he's out of there, and that leaves just Brandon. So the only on their current roster right now is Brandon Cooks, Kiki Kuzi, and then rookie Isaiah Coulter, who hasn't played very much yet at all. Who is, in fact, I'm not sure. He might just be up from IR like this week. I know he's on IR for a lot of season. And I'm just going to go ahead and assume they call up Damian Ratley from the practice squad because I think he's their best option probably on that other receiver spot. And on the Colts, they actually get back. Well, it looks like they're going to get back Denico Autry and DeForest Buckner. Not a guarantee. They're both coming off COVID list like today or yesterday, but they're both eligible to play. I'm going to assume they both play. And honestly, last game I cared that they weren't in. This one I don't really, to be honest. So offensive line versus defensive line. There's just not going to be very much push at all from the Texans offensive line. right? Like Zach Fulton and Nick Martin they can show some things against like weaker players. Colts do not have that, so I have issues with DeForest Buckner as a down to down penetrator and disruptor. I think he's really 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 overrated. He's not on the level of Aaron Donald or Chris Jones, anything, or Grady Jarrett at all. But he still is, when in the top 10 in the NFL or whatever. I'm not going to roast him too much, but here he's good enough, right, to actually kind of get people to think that he's better than he is. And because Zach Fulton really has a lot of problems with the exact type of player DeForest Buckner is in terms of losing, like good hand placement and agility, strength in his hand, all that type of stuff. Zach Fulton's vulnerable. Nick Martin's not great either. I like Max Sharpring, who thank God they unbenched him for fucking Senio Kelovitze, which was a stupid decision by them earlier in the season. But point is, there's not going to be very much push from the Texans on the interior, and on the edge, maybe even less. Larry Tunsil's not a great run blocker; he's just okay. Titus Howard I like a lot, but when you talk about Denico Autry and Al-Qadim Muhammad, the Colts defensive ends generally on rundowns, they're fucking good. Like they are nothing to sneeze at. And while I like Titus Howard, I think he's going to have a couple plays this game where he gets on. It's nothing consistent, and the Texans just suck at running the ball, right? So on the second level. Again, last game I talked about how it was an issue. They only had 2 linebackers instead of 3 because Bobby Okereke is out. Oh, who is out again this game? I kind of skipped over him. Here, I don't care. Because the Texans' run game is real, real booty, and Darius Leonard is going to eat in this game. I'm saying because he's going to be free at all times. He's not going to get impacted by the Texans' O line or their scheme. He's going to eat in this game. Anthony Walker's good too if you give him those circumstances. So yeah, that's tough. So then you talk about the overall run game, it's just gonna be awful. I mean, the Texans generally suck at running the ball outside of like very favorable scenarios, which is this is the opposite. This is a terrible scenario. They're not gonna be able to run the ball. So you talk about the receivers, or sorry, the pass rush is next. Now here there is a little bit of hope for the Texans, right? Because none of the Colts really are great pass rushers. And actually, I think the Texans' O line is way better at pass blocking than they're giving credit for. Deshaun Watson causes so many issues with the dumb shit he does. um, but that's gonna be the case here too, right? Like I'm not gonna gloss over it because that is also gonna happen here. Justin Houston is good enough to very occasionally be the tackles, nothing consistent. And like I said, DeForest Buckner's not a doubt pass rusher the way people think he is. He's okay, but he's nothing crazy. But here, because they're all disciplined and they're all good enough to win and are athletic, Deshaun Watson trying to do his dumb shit running around with Yakety sax playing in the background, it's not going to work. I mean, he'll have a couple plays probably because he generally always does, but like no more than that because they're athletic. Like I said, the Colts front is athletic and they're disciplined and they're going to be able to handle him. So you talk about the receivers and listen, Brandon Cooks is like really probably going to be very good in this game because he is the type of receiver that can notably beat Xavier Rhodes and Rocky Sin like consistently because they both really struggle with like smaller agile receivers. So I think Brandon Cooks is gonna be open a lot in this game and is gonna be really useful. But other than him, I mean, there's nothing, right? Like the tight ends for the Texans aren't very good at creating separation. I actually like Jordan Akins as like an after the catch player, but here compared to what the Colts are gonna throw at him between Darius Leonard and whether it's Kenny Moore or Justin Blackman, whatever they end up doing with the tight end matchups. No, they're not. The Texans tight ends are not good enough. Although Darren Fells might have a couple first downs for sure. But the other receivers, I mean, Kenny Moore, 1,000 times better than Kiki Kuti. Kiki Kuti is a whatever slot receiver. He's no better than any other slot receiver around the league, really. He's worse. And other spot, like I said, I think Damian Ratley's like okay, but between him and Isaiah Coulter, they're the opposite of Brandon Cooks. They're either like bigger in the case of Coulter or just not athletic in the case of Ratley. And whether it's Rocky Sin or Rhodes on them, they're going to be able to pretty effectively press them out of the game generally. So it's just rough outside of Brandon Cooks, like I said, big plus for him. So then you talk about Watson versus the defense. Watson is he just limits his own offense consistently. There's a reason that even against bad defenses, they generally score in the teens or 20s, and it's not because their offensive play calling all the way. Now that doesn't help. Don't get me wrong. I'm not gonna put it all on Watson, but he causes so many issues for himself, and that's gonna be the case here. I mean, he's not gonna consistently read the cold zone well. He doesn't have enough options thoroughly to when he's scrambling around to find space. Like I said, Brad Cook's can be really good, but the Colts, I'm sure, know that and are going to adjust to it. And then you're just talking about him trying to move the ball to Isaiah Coulter, Kiki Kuti. That's going to be really, really bad. Now he'll have a few plays, but even then, he's not somebody who generates a ton of plays every game. He generates like one or two. They get put on a highlight reel, but That's 1 or 2 out of 70 plays in an offense. So the overall pass game is just going to be, I mean, mediocre probably at best. Like I said, Brandon Cooks could go off in this game, but even if he does, there's like nothing else. And the Colts defense, again, I kind of harp on them. They're really disciplined at the very least, whether they lack the real playmakers that other teams do outside of like Darius Leonard. But they are really and there's a reason that this year they've been a top defense because they played a bunch of bad teams, right? And that's the case here too. So the red zone, at least there's a little hope because Watson does help in that area, but even he's not Russell Wilson, he's not Patrick Mahomes, and he has to exercise his ability through something. And the Texans' red zone options are terrible in this game. They can't run the ball, and Darren Fells, I guess, maybe could make a contested. There's just nothing consistently in their schemes, not anything special. So I have them between 13 and 20 points, and maybe that's a little high. I won't say that, though, because generally Watson is capable of at least one time a game going on some dumbass long drive. So I'll give them like 13 to 20. So yeah, I got Colts 23-30, Texans 13-20. So I definitely, like I said, I feel pretty damn strong about the Colts minus 3.5. Because with the Texans, I get worried about Watson like backdooring stuff, but 3.5 is not enough for me to like be super scared about that. And um, I don't really see any path for the Texans to be leading in this game. And then you talk about the over under. Like I said, I feel very strongly about the under because the Colts offense or the Texans offense, but that one I'll be a little bit more careful with because yeah, that could in the last minutes of the game get flipped on its head because the Colts could be blowing them out. Texans throw a garbage time touchdown in there, so I definitely prefer the Colts side of it, but the unders I think certainly bettable too. Yeah, so that is Colts Texans.